Hello and welcome back to the Apprentice One-to-One podcast. It is not me just droning on about what it takes to be an electrician anymore. I have got the proper people back on the show, Richard and Craig. How are you both? First up, Richard, how are you doing?
Very well, mate. Thanks. Nice to be back. I know we had a conversation yesterday in the car park, but it just seems like it's been a while. I haven't seen Craig for a while, and it's just nice to get back and have a little chat, have a catch up, and see where the year's going to lead us. So lots going on, but yeah, nice to be back, mate. Pleasure.
Good stuff. Yeah, we'll dive into all of that later on in the chat. How are you, Craig?
Yeah, good. Been in hiding a little bit from you boys. Been a busy few weeks, which I'm sure we'll touch on and talk about what's going on in the world of Burgess Electrical. But yeah, it's exciting times and some interesting bits happened, that's for sure.
Yeah, we're going to go to what Richard's been up to because some of you might have seen him if you visited the Elex show down at Ally Pally. We're going to get to that, but I'm going to start with you, Craig, and some of the stuff you've been up to in the day job at Burgess. You've got some exciting projects going on. Anything you can update us on with all of that lot?
Yeah, we just seem to be fortunate at the minute. Like we've landed what contact designs have been good. Like it seems to be growing from sense to sense. I've personally gone through my Ieng interview for the IET now, and just in that sort of lull of where it takes 6 weeks to get any sort of response out of them as to like whether they're happy or not, and then go and join the boys club. But it's good. I mean, we've been through another massive design, which was interesting. We were appointed to be stage 4 designers this time, effectively. So we took the client wishes and acted on behalf of the client as the client consultant team, effectively doing the design for the contractor that we're working for in the project. And then literally on Monday, we then start on site installing the whole design that we've done. So therefore, it's completely my fault when it's wrong because I drew it, I designed it, I calced it. Like the only thing I've not done is install it, which is a good thing for everybody. But by the time we finish this building now, it's going to have been a great journey because it started like 2 years ago now, and we done the initial fit out all the way from new panels, new heads, new mains, all the way throughout the whole of the building. That was for a landlord. He then sold the building, and we are now doing for the people that he sold the building to because they were happy with the work. We're now doing their fit out for them to move their whole company in by September. So we'll have literally took a 3-story empty building, external lighting, street lighting, lamp post, mains, power, all the way through to turning it into a functioning office with backup UPSs, generators, like the whole hog ready to handle it by September. So that whole journey I've learned a lot on, to be honest, from a design side of life. It pushed me in areas that I hadn't known about before. Like I'd never done a BREEAM project before, for example. I'd never had to think about energy efficiency for light pollution to protect bats and the wildlife. That was genuinely a first for me. But yeah, it's been a great learning journey, but it's meant we're busy. Heads have been down because you've got the big project going on that's taking all of the design. Everything else has still got to happen, and we're doing some really interesting projects with some big mains. We're helping some distribution centres for a big supermarket we do a lot of work for. They are now turning all of their lorry bays to having electric chargers and new transformers, and there's new sub mains coming in and whole new boards and big cable going on. So it's like, you know, when you're calculating 120 in parallel to be pulled over 150 meters, you're talking about big supplies and big cables. And so there's some really interesting stuff going on, and definitely pushing boundaries of skills at the minute, that's for sure.
It sounds brilliant, but also very scary from a design point of view when you know everything falls down after that, doesn't it? You're setting it out, and if it doesn't work, everyone's knocking on your door. So, you know, there's the satisfaction of seeing all that come to fruition. As contractors, we talk about this a lot. We go in to do a bit of work, bit of job on a project, bit of stuff on a project, and you don't ever see really the finished article. So there must be a lot of satisfaction in that for you to see where all this has come from, software or paper or wherever you started, to having it all in front of someone's eyes now. It's got to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's it's been wicked, and it's a great learning journey. And what's good is I've got a good team in the office around me at our place. Like, you know, we've got a lot of, I mean, all of our office staff have all been sparks. They've all come up through, they've all done. So, you know, you're talking to project managers that have lived the life on site at the spark. You're talking to the owner of our company who's been doing design now for 18 years of his career across MOD bases and supermarkets and industrial and commercial. Like, there's good knowledge and other people to bounce off. I'd be lying if I was sat here saying it's all me, because it's not. There's lots of conversations taking place. I mean, we had one the other day just about high integrity protective conductors, for example. If you're using that with buzz bar, could we use the armoring of the cable as the high integrity protective conductor to give you a secondary fault path, or do you have to run a separate cable? You know, genuine good conversations where you're like, well, what's your view on that? And you get 5 or 6 different views of experienced people giving their pennies worth. It's a good place to be honest.
It sounds like a proper decent old school electrical company that we don't see enough of really anymore. So full credit to you and the team at Burgess Electrical. How did you find your IET Ieng interview? Was that what you expected?
I didn't really know what to expect. So, because you don't get anything, right? So my process of the IET has been, I mean, I didn't really know what to expect. So you do the application, you send that off, you liaise with PRA, and then you wait about 8 weeks to get an interview date. And then you get the interview date, but you're told that sort of 2 or 3 weeks in advance. And then literally the day before, you then get a Zoom meeting link, because it's all on Zoom now. It's not face to face anymore. But for me, personally, it's the same, because I think you build a better bond with people if you're sat in a room with them having a conversation. But, you know, the world's a changing place, and that's how it is. The 2 gentlemen that I had on the interview, perfectly lovely guys. There's no response to anything. So you lay out that you start with a 15-minute presentation, basically, of explaining your competence and how you think you meet the criteria of the UK spec. And then they spend about the next hour quizzing you and challenging you and basically asking you to prove all the things you've either put in your application or any gaps you may have had. I mean, at one point we're talking about global warming and whether net zero is possible and how we use AI in the design world and how that potentially is coming in and taking a place in the future. And it's like, it certainly made me think. I'll put a couple of LinkedIn posts out about this. It made me think about, like, I don't know where I sit or feel with AI involved in design, if I'm perfectly honest. I don't understand ChatGPT. I've never looked into that world. I don't know anything about it, but there's certain things in life I feel that a robot could be able to do. And there's certain things I feel that yes, the robot would be very factual, but there are times when you still need that human element to be able to understand the situation. Like, and it'll be my naivety, I'm sure, but if a robot's saying do this from A to B, actually we would look at it on site and C is the better option. And I don't know how that crosses that line when you come to a design world and futuristic, but I'm sure it will, and I'm sure it will happen, but I just don't know where I sit with that at present currently. And it was interesting, some of the comments we got back, because some people are very much for that sort of side of life and other people are very much against it. And I think it will be interesting to see how that works over the next 2 to 3 years. I would imagine it will start to take full effect.
I think I'm on your page on that one. I think a lot of us from engineering spaces don't fully trust these computers to make those decisions, but ChatGPT, as an example, has come on so far. It's crazy. When you first start to see some of these posts online, you could tell it had been written and crafted by ChatGPT, but now that's not the case. It's the same with a lot of these essays as well that kids and university students were pumping out through ChatGPT. It was easy to spot. Now it's all contextualized and far more clever and almost impossible to distinguish between what's real and what isn't. I think with electrical design, I'm sure that'll follow in the future, but the human element, I think, has got to always be there. There's got to be some checking and stuff. It's an interesting one. I'm glad to hear you enjoyed your interview anyway with the IET. That's an achievement in its own right, and hopefully you get the outcome you want. I'm sure you will. sure you will. You made a good point about getting in the room there in front of people. Totally agree with you on that. I think that's the best way to do it. And myself and Richard had a little meeting over the course of yesterday, which is quite exciting. We're going to speak a bit about that as well. But before that, Richard, you've been off to Elex Ally Pally and done some presenting. How did you find that?
Yeah, I mean, having been a visitor for many, many years, and way back when it was all about the technical content, you know, it was a Sparky show. It wasn't like a tool show. It was more about technical content, talk to the manufacturers, new innovations, all that. One or two bits of tools, but that's what it was. And then it kind of developed into more tools. And I understand now that, you know, you got all these Milwaukee packs and all these tools to do various things, which is great. But I felt it kind of lost its way a little bit. And then of course COVID hit, which didn't help, you know, and then trying to get an event back running after COVID, etc. So I wasn't overly excited about attending, and I've never attended Elex. I normally do the Coventry one because that's something up the road from me. But I was excited to go and represent the charity and the good work that we do there. But equally, we were asked to present a seminar, and having been to see Darren at CEF Live and still seeing the issues around people not following safe working practices, etc., and you know the amount of deaths and injuries that are still happening through, you know, not isolating properly, being lazy, working live, and all the rest of it. I thought, well, you know what? Most of the time, it's just an excuse, isn't it? So what we wanted to do is remind everyone around their obligations, whether you're an employer or employee, and you know, try and find out, well, you know, what are the excuses? What's the issues around why we're still seeing these fatalities and injuries? So we came up with a presentation, Safe Isolation, What's Your Excuse, which was pretty good. Super Rod were very kind to lend us some of their latest data, but they've conducted several surveys. And, you know, the results were shocking, really, and some of the excuses were equally as bad. And then myself and Dave had a conversation about, you know, some of the excuses that we've heard over the many years that we've been out on site. So I kind of took an old bag with me and stuck a load of excuses in there. And we kind of got a bit of interaction going with the attendees, the crowd and whatever. Lots of sparkies there and whatever. It was pretty good. We set them off, first of all, with a little task. Dave got all the 7, 8 steps within the safe isolation procedure, and their first task was to scan the QR code in the presentation and just arrange the steps in the right order and the right sequence. And the person to do that in the quickest time and in the correct order, Mega very kindly donated to us some approved voltage indicators and a proving unit, which was quite nice. So straight away, you're giving them a bit of a carrot and a bit of a stick. So do this, you win this. But the results weren't great in terms of, I think there was only 2 on the first day that got it in the right sequence. The rest didn't. And I think on the second day, there was even less. So it goes to show there's a lot of work still to do. We reminded them of their roles and responsibilities under EAWR, which I think that, you know, that's kind of gone out the window a little bit. I don't think, you know, that information's gone. And indeed, the equipment, the requirements of GS38, and you know what, you want to go to work, you want to get home safe. So there is no excuse, you know. So it went down pretty well. We got a round of applause on both days, so I think everyone enjoyed it. You know, you got to try and make it interactive, a bit of fun, but equally, it's a really important message. And ultimately, you know, we shared the data, and there was some quite, you know, shocked faces within the crowd, but there was a few that probably thought, you know, well, I don't know, I don't really do it myself, etc. It wasn't about trying to call people out on it. It was just to remind people that, look, you know, this shouldn't be happening in this day and age. The amount of free guides that are out there, as being one, Best Practice Guide 2, and all the good stuff that Gary does at eFix, and all the other great websites, your videos you've done yourself, Martin, all that, it's all free to access. So in that respect, there's no excuse. The equipment's freely available. I know TIS do a really good deal for an AVI and a little lock-off kit and a proving unit. And so do a lot of the manufacturers. It's freely available in most wholesalers. So, you know, what are the excuses? We need to try and change people's attitudes, and, you know, how we do that. I don't think we can do that individually, but I think with the help from yourself, Mark, bringing the key players together, I think collectively we've got an option there to do something moving forward. So that went down really well. There was loads of people on both days. It was really busy. There weren't really many DIYers and all the rest of it, or other trades. It was all Sparkies. Some really good conversations going on. You know, a lot of them were questioning a known live source, and we had loads of questions after. They were coming over to the stand. They didn't or weren't aware of all the guides that we do. They weren't aware they were free. They weren't aware about RAG, and you know what a good resource that is. We put together a little fact sheet that I did based on some of the inquiries that we get a lot of, and the small scale solar PV course that me and Dave attended last year, where there's a number of Sparks on that course, but they still weren't too familiar with some of the key regulations around generating sets, etc., within section 551 of the regs. You know, i.e., if you're feeding a PV system, it's got to be a double pole RCBO. Most Sparks think that they're all double pole, where they're not, and where you find that information. So Hager were very kind to us. They lent us a few of their devices, so we could point out the regulation, but actually explain it on a device, and you know, show the Sparks where to look, where to get that information from. A lot of Sparks still don't know where to find what type of RCD it is and how to apply, you know, that regulation 53133, etc. And then there's this big one around the maximum, you know, current carrying capacity of an assembly, in terms of if you've got 100 amps worth of load and you've got 16 amps feeding back, you need an enclosure that can withstand 116 amps. Again, a lot of people will go into 712, but they won't consider everything that's in 551 as well. So it was just trying to bring some attention to some of the Sparks, and you know, again, that went down really well. They weren't aware of it. They took some of the leaflets that we'd produced and had printed with them. We had a number of best practice guides that we printed, which is unusual because it's normally a download and an electronic version. So they went down well. It was great to meet up with a lot of colleagues that I generally only see face to face via Teams. Some of the assessors, area engineers, and some of the guys on the RAG and on JPL. That was really good. And it was just good to be able to talk to Sparks, but on a different level, but not to call them out on anything or assess them in any way, but just support them. So really positive, I've got to say. It was really positive. A lot of the old rogues were out and about, Mr. Savoury, etc. Nice to catch up with those. But the only downside to it was that if you're an exhibitor, you don't get a bacon roll.
Scandalous.
So I was gutted about that. I was absolutely gutted because, you know, when you dine bacon roll, do you know what I mean? But the whole experience, being on the other side of it, was really, really positive. So we're hoping to maybe attend a couple more. But, you know, we'll see how we get on. But I thought, you know, the effect that we had, it was just a bit of a trial to see how we thought it went. But it was really positive, and fair play to the guys that run, you know, Elex and Professional Electrician magazine. Richard came and had a chat, and the other chap, what's his name, Alex? Anthony, sorry, yeah. Nice to see him. Nice to see the NIC back. That was really positive as well. Napier had a great stand. Vargo had the biggest stand, as they always do. And yeah, it was just good, mate. Really, really, really positive. So if they can keep that up with those amount of contractors turning up instead of it being a ghost town, it's good. It's got back to where it was. There was some good technical seminars as well delivered by the IET. Nice to catch up with Craig and Napier equally. Skymoore, as always, did a couple there. It was good. I'd like to think that most Sparks got something out of it, as opposed to turned you up and it was just a bit of a jumble sale and people were trying to.
I heard it was really well attended. That's
good.
a massive upside. Did you go, Craig?
No, I was planning to, but just work's been a bit manic. I am going to go to Coventry though. I think that's September, isn't it?
September, yeah.
It's literally about half an hour away from me, so I'm definitely going to be heading over to the Coventry one for a bit, that's for sure. I haven't been to an Elex for probably about 5, 6, maybe 7 years. The last time I went, I think I was working in colleges when they used to give the tickets for college students to be able to come if they were escorted by the tutors. So yeah, it's been a long time. But definitely planning to head back over to Coventry, and it looked like it was good. I've watched Dave's video on it, and I've watched, can't remember who else's video I've watched, but some videos that have been released about what was taking place, and it looks like a nice place to meet up and have a bit of learning, a bit of knowledge, and your activity sounds like it was good, Richard. It sounds like the information that's needed for Sparks, and
Yeah,
it's amazing what you forget, isn't it? Like there's some stuff we could never forget. But I was reading the IET article the other day actually in the Wire about the rating of breakers when they're in the boards, and we'll probably go over that another night. But how many of us forget when we're whacking everything through containment and putting it in the board that actually to go and check the manufacturer's guide for their derating factors of breakers if they're on a fixed load. And actually, your 32 amp supply maybe needs to be on a 50 amp breaker just because of their, I don't know, a 0.6 derating factor or something that people are missing. There's almost so much information that
yeah.
we
It's
almost forget more than we learn. And if you're definitely not doing any learning, then it's moving too quick. But as you rightly say, there's so many archives out there now that it's never been easier to learn how to be a Sparky.
it,
But,
yeah, I think the information from manufacturers could still be clearer and easier to find, but there's that many myths out there that they get brought to the forefront, and the stuff that really matters doesn't. So, you know, for instance, oh, you got to put your highest rated breaker right next to the main switch and blah, blah, blah. Why? The main switch is rated at 100 amps. The buzz bar is rated at 100 amps. It doesn't matter, you know, where you put the circuits. It's not, it's just a myth. It's one of those myth things, isn't it? But have you considered the operating temperatures of the devices when they're at full load, as you quite rightly say? And you got to compare that with the manufacturer's information. You may need to, you know, uprate the device, etc., etc. So there's that many considerations you need to, and it's quite complex. You know, who'd want to be a designer?
It's funny when you share stuff on YouTube because you get comments in both directions around all that. I've shared videos where you start with the biggest breaker and work your way, as we traditionally all have.
Of course,
I've done the spacing and shuffling around, and whichever one you put out, you'll always get a question in the or comment in the opposite direction as to what you've shared. People have so many different views around all of this. It's like you said, it's the old wives' tales or whatever that hang around out in industry.
Craig will have a few stories, but you know, earthing and bonding, another conversation for another time. But the amount of times when I used to deliver 2391, etc., and talking about verifying the continuity of your main protected bonding conductors. Oh yeah, it's got to be 0.05. Or if it's over that, so where does it say that then? It does. I'll be flicking through the regs. Well, where does it say that then? It doesn't say that, does it? It says that it's got to be effectively connected. You know, obviously, the lower the resistance, the better, obviously, but there's nothing, depends on length and temperature and all the rest of it. It's another one of them wives' tales. Oh, got to be 0.05. It's in the book. I'll show you. Go on then.
But the guidance notes don't help themselves, and you know I really value the IEC, which is why I'm trying to become an IEng member of them. But you're reading the guidance note, and it tells you about that 0.05 coming from the fact that they've based it on an average meter distance, like a 16 mil bond of an earth, and therefore they expect that that's what everybody's using. And they don't go on to explain that if you're going outside those parameters, then you need to be going back to like Appendix I of your on-site guide and working out, as you rightly say, what is your resistance of your cable, how far do you run, what's your expected value to be. If you're not happy with it, then are you upsizing your cable, or you take, you know, it's all of that level of conversation is missing. I mean, I had a conversation, I was teaching last night, and I just took over a new group, and we were having a conversation, and I said, we got onto extraneous and exposed conductive parts. And I went, oh, so can you, what do you put on to do an extraneous conductive part? And they're like, what's supplementary bonding? I was like, is it? They're like, yeah, that's all it is. It's just supplementary bonding. Like, okay, like the gaps are just like staggering at the minute still for me about the amount of miscommunication out there to what's coming in. My biggest pet peeve, I know that Gaz always has his one about CPCs, but mine is about when you call it a main earth.
Yeah.
That's my like.
Earthing and bonding is a minefield and a half, isn't it? When you really get into it, guidance note 8, you know, that's a bigger book in its own right. To be fair, they squeezed it into that small little book. There could be a lot more in there, but I mean, I guess it's where do you stop with all of it?
Well, as we said on a recent post or example, Craig's recent post on LinkedIn. When you look at that guidance note, and then BS 7430 and some of the other standards around, earthing of substations and all that, and this is where Mr. Pink comes in, Mr. Crannis, because his knowledge of that side of things is extreme. It is a lot to consider, but there's no point looking at all that stuff if you haven't got the basic understanding. And I think we've got to go back to basics with a lot of this stuff. Got to go right back, because somewhere some of it's got a little bit lost, So I think, and that might be again, we spoke about it a future podcast, etc. With the aid of drawings and some diagrams to talk about it and to point them where the information is in the regs, because it's there, albeit not explained that well. But within part 2 in definitions, there's that drawing, that diagram that people don't know it's there, that illustrates your main earthing conductor, your main protective bonding conductors, any supplementary bonding, your circuit protective conductors. A brilliant little diagram in there, which you can then associate part 2 and part 4 and all the rest of it. Go back to that little drawing,
It's not that it's not there, Richard. All you have to do is be able to identify the number to pass the regs exam. You don't have to know what it actually means.
No, but this is the problem, Craig, isn't it? This is the problem. 60 questions, 2 minutes a question, is 3 practice exams. Oh, it's all right, I've got my regs. And then, you go into the of how it's put together and how it's structured and the idea of how you use it. And then to try and understand parts of it. Don't get me wrong, I don't understand all parts of it, but I know how the book works and how you apply it. That is a massive issue, massive problem. But again, that's something we could potentially look at in the future.
I think people feel. Sorry, Craig, go ahead.
So I was going to say it's got to be, because I've never had more than 4 people say anything on a post, and I shared that in 2 forums, and I think it reached over 70,000 people or something by the time it had finished being reshared and reposted and whatever else. And you think, like, that obviously shows there's a massive gap in knowledge just in that one subject. And I wasn't putting the post out as somebody who knows it all. I was saying, does anybody else feel like this? Because it's such a mind wave. And 70,000 impressions or something that hit. And I've never had more than 3 people do anything on a post I've put up. So it's clearly something that we could maybe look to explore, because if there's all those people, and there are lots of people add me after that post, and I'm talking from chartered engineers to designers to Spark to apprentices, all the way across the board, people wanting to talk about that post. So it definitely shows that there's something there, I think, that's worth maybe exploring and just giving our spin on it. And like you say, Richard, going back to basics and starting from the start and going, right, well, as an apprentice, let's talk about what earthing is. Let's talk about what bonding is. Let's talk about how you apply them. What is an exposed conductive part? What is an exposed, and maybe we build a small series on making that gradually a little bit more and more complex and see if that's something people are interested in. But I was stunned by the responses and the impressions it got, if you like, because I thought it would have been more comprehensive than what it clearly is, unfortunately.
It's brilliant. And that's a great topic to cover for me more than anything, because I learned such a lot from chatting with you guys about all this stuff. So it will definitely brush my game up. And you don't know what you don't know, do you? I think sometimes that's something we all forget. And same with your safe isolation thing you did, Richard. Yeah. I'd be stood there maybe feeling a bit pressured with you guys watching. I'm not going to promise I would get it right. I've done the EFIX challenge wall and it looks easy, like anyone could do it under 2 minutes. Yeah. But when the pressure's on and someone's over you watching, the mistakes can happen, can't they? They're all human at that level.
I might not get it right either, but there's so many different scenarios. And, similar to what we discussed yesterday, I mean, you've got multiple supplies as well. And, there's so many considerations. And ultimately, it's about doing it as safe as you can. And if we don't have to work live, then just don't. People just do it. We'll be guilty of it maybe in the past, but there's just no reason to. There's no excuse in the world to do it. If you do have to do it, EAWR is quite clear about it's a last resort. And if you do, you've got to make sure that you've done everything you can, PPE being the last resort, have other safe systems of work in place to do it as safely as you can. Simple as that, isn't it? But I think the more examples we can give around the different types of scenarios and you may have to think about the sequence, etc. when a curveball's thrown in or something like that. I think that's gonna help. But there's some of the excuses. There isn't an excuse. It's just negligence, isn't it, really? And it's not just yourself you've got to consider, because you might kill somebody else, you know. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do around that, but you know, collectively, if we all join forces together, get the message out there and offer it out without any obligation, no problem. If you want to come and have a go at the isolation procedure, if you get it wrong, doesn't matter. No one's judging anyone, but hopefully you'll take that with you and pass that on, and then yeah, all that, so.
I will definitely come along and get it wrong. I'm sure I will. But I will do my best to try and get it right. There is a sort of campaign initiative that we're building away in the background. I'm going to talk about it now. Malcolm Duncan's going to share a post kind of releasing what we're up to. But there are bodies of industry getting together. So as Richard has said, from the ESF, where he works, Electrical Safety First, there's NAPIP, the NIC, the ECA, IET, and some brands and manufacturers from industry, TIF, Superrod, SEA, and some individuals as well. Craig's involved, there's some other employers as well, and myself, and most recently the team from Professional Electrician and Elex. And they're kindly giving us some space at a few of the events to try and do something around all this, which is hopefully going to centre on the good people of Electric Safety First and getting those seminars back on. So I think that's something good to do. And yeah, just to try and stop those issues, because whatever we all think of it, and there is some comment on social media around the virtuousness of sharing all this stuff around safe isolation, and I get it. There is 13 people dying every year from the electrical industry due to electrical accidents, and hundreds more injured. So whatever your views are outside of all of that, that is something that I think we should aim for zero. Neil said it in our meeting. I'll share that right now. He said we should aim for zero, and I agree with him. It's maybe unrealistic, but that should be the goal. So yeah, that's coming, and I think that'd be nice for you guys at Elex to continue that work alongside the Superrod survey, and hopefully the rest of industry, social media space. If anybody is out there listening to this and you want to input, it's not a closed shop. It really is an invitation to absolutely anyone to input and have industry come together to try and solve that problem for good. Is long and short of it.
And it's needed, and even from an education point of view, and I've been guilty of this myself in the past, at level 2, they have to pass a safe isolation assessment. So you watch them pass that as part of the health and safety, and then they don't safe isolate again for the rest of the time. You're already starting some of those bad habits. It's something that needs to be practiced time and time again. And I know we get lots of people with opinions and views, and lots of popular people in industry that will have a public forum who will say that it's not worth what they're doing or it's not done right, but something's better than nothing, and the more something we can do, hopefully the better it can be, because as you rightly said, you can't get one scenario anymore. What is safe isolation now when you go into a house and it's got a car charger and it's got solar and it's got a fuse board and it's got a garage board? That is very different to some of the, and I'll probably get crucified for this, but unfortunately, to some of the outdated City and Guild textbooks that are still being taught in education that just tell you the 1-10-step process that is exactly the same every time for every scenario, because that's what they're then assessed about. Some of this, in my opinion, needs to be updated and refreshed. And then that investment back into education. If you're teaching people right from day one, I mean, I think when I last went through my course, and something that I really value what EFIX do is they give out a lockout kit to everybody. What does that really cost in the grand scheme of things to every student in a college gets given a lockout kit? Look after this. Bring it in every time you're in the workshop. Make sure you lock your board off. Make sure you go through the process. If you drum it in there, it should naturally start to flow out to industry. Now, I agree with you, Richard. I've had comments on site before I work now, where you're like, oh, what, you've actually locked off? Like, aren't you a geek? It's like, yeah, but I'll go home to my kids tonight. Like, sorry, you don't think I'm cool. That's your problem.
And as Mark quite rightly pointed out today, with his posts on social media, I said earlier that it's what you leave behind as well. You've got to consider all these things. So, the attitude is wrong. I'm all right, Jack, but, what about if you kill somebody else or injure somebody else? You don't get a second chance generally, do you? And I think an important point was raised yesterday where, most people will use VDE tools now, and, you blow your pliers up or you get a shock. generally don't kill you. So we think, oh, that's okay. It doesn't matter then, you know, because of we're kind of protected in a certain level, but it's just not on. It shouldn't be happening, you know. It shouldn't be happening.
No, totally. I think you made a point there, Craig, about it being cool. If you think back, this is probably before our even us old farts, before our generation. But there used to be a time when
That's right.
drink driving was cool, not wearing seatbelts was
Yeah.
cool. You see that now; it is so socially unacceptable. It is so far from cool. And I think we need to get on that train with safe isolation as well. That, you know, it's the thing that is everyone wants to see each other doing. It's just the natural consequence of going out and doing electrical work. And hopefully we can get there with the little effort that we've got going on. It was just nice to have a lot of people from all throughout industry in the same room. And I've got to say, I forgot to mention EFIX and Gaz, which is that's tragedy. And Gaz is looking so well, by the way. For those who haven't seen him in person, he's vanishing before our very eyes. I was shocked. The guy is looking trim. Credit to him for that effort as well. But yeah, the EFIX team are behind this too. So yeah, there's a lot of people there, and we want to grow that out as things move along, and hopefully it'll have some positive impact. And we don't get slaughtered online, and as these things often happen, can blow apart very quickly just through a bit of bad interaction and engagement, I guess. So do bear with us and get behind it is my call out on that one.
But that's fine to question something. I've got no problem with that. But then, you know, reach out. Let's have a constructive conversation about it, because otherwise you become part of the problem. You're not solving the problem. It's okay, you know, moaning about something or don't agree with something. So come up with a sensible conversation, and collectively, you know, let's come up with a solution for it. How can we help? How can we get those figures right down? Let's aim for 0, but, you know, get the figures right down, and let's make a positive impact. You ain't going to do that if you're behind a keyboard slagging somebody off and calling somebody out, and that's okay. No one's perfect, but, you know, make a point, make a valid point, and let's have a conversation. And I'd like to think that electricians are good at that generally. You know, we're above calling people out, slagging people off. Let's have a conversation about it. If you've got a valid point, let's call it out. If someone's made a mistake, you've got something wrong, that's okay. That's life, isn't it? You know, nobody knows everything, but you don't help by slagging something off if you don't agree. Why don't you agree? Do you know what I mean? So it's all about being positive in it. It's what it is.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I'll put my flag in the sand. I think if you can convince me that not walking off and not isolating when you're doing electrical work is better than doing it, then I'll be very pleased. I'm not normally quite stand in my post, but I think, like, if you can prove to me that it's better and safer to be working live than it is to be walking off, then fair play to you. But I think this is one of those topics that is one of the few in the electrical industry that is quite black and white. It's health and safety at the end of the day. It's not even just electrical regs, is it? It's health and safety now. To be walking off and making sure you are safe and making sure everyone around you is safe. And it just needs to be applied. But the training and the skills and the various methods, I think, do need to be updated to reflect that. But ultimately, you've got to be making sure you're safe. That's your responsibility, isn't it? That's what it's there for, and that's the law. At the end of the day, it's not opinion.
Yeah,
definitely. Self-responsibility on all that at the end of the day comes down to the individual, doesn't it? There's no one sat on your shoulder telling you what you should do all day, every day. So you've got to take that on board. Outside of the discussion, Richard, and the technicalities of all, how did you find the pressure of presenting to a room of sparks? I know you're used to it in a classroom environment and the rest of your career and stuff, but it must be a bit daunting with a room full of eyeballs looking at you.
I enjoy it. I mean, you know, I was in teaching and learning for 8-9 years, so trust me, you ask Craig, you don't do that job unless you enjoy doing it. And if it's helped some people, and quite a number of people, organisations came after and said, could you come to ours and deliver training for us? Luke nearly lost his mind. He was like, you know, but the problem is that you've got to try and get people thinking and get them involved a little bit. And, you know, Dave's been in teaching and training a number of years himself. So it's great to work with him again, because we kind of bounce off each other, if that makes sense. I'll come up with some wacky idea, and then he'll apply it and implement it. You know what I mean? I said, what about, let's call it, what's your excuse? It just came into my brain, and then I spent hours I found this old jiffy bag, and I cut some letters out of a bit of cardboard and then I sprayed over it so it looked like an old school bag with excuses on it. And then we thought of excuses that we've heard in the past, printing them on different fluorescent coloured paper. Dave cut them out like a speech bubble, stuck them in this envelope, and then went round all the sparks that were sat listening to the presentation. What's your excuse? And got him to put his hand in, pulled it out. Ah, he can't be bothered. Look, what's the next one? So it was a bit of tongue in cheek in it, but it sent a powerful message across, and it worked really well. It was really, really good. But you've got to engage people. You've got to get them involved, but you've got to make them see what we're trying to say and remind them of some key information. And we did it quite well. And if it didn't work, then as Craig will tell you, you reflect on it and you make some changes. But I kind of knew it would. Well, I didn't know, but you kind of think, put some time and effort into it, and we've been in that space for many years, so it is what we do. But I'm glad it worked. It worked as well as it did, and it'd be nice to present that again. But anyone's welcome. Whatever, doesn't matter. Just get the message out there, and let's get rid of the excuses. That's the point. And hopefully, it'll be, or we'll see some change in attitude. Hopefully, especially with everything else that we're going to try and do. But you could repeat that every single year because it's a massive safety issue, isn't it? And that's what we're all about. And let's get the bloody injuries down and the deaths without silly excuses, So it was great. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. So, but yeah. So.
Greg, you look like you were waiting to say something.
No, I was just laughing and enjoying the fact of when you're in teaching, and it's a strange way to think about it, but when you stand up and teach, you almost feel like you're onto a stage and you're performing almost as to like what you're trying to put across. And I could just envisage in my head there of Richard and Dave getting the stage back together, and some bad boy bands giving out like all the useful information at Elex, and just like, because it is, isn't it, Richard? When you're up there and everybody's watching you. Or at least I do anyway. I almost have to, because I'm not as confident in loads of public settings as it may seem, but when I'm teaching, it's not me, if you know what I mean. It's you put that front on about, you're talking about something you understand a little bit, and that's kind of your confidence to then go across. So I just enjoy and imagining that's what those two had going on at Elex. And I was half wondering if they'd be on the party bus the night before to get ready for it or not, or if it was,
But
definitely the party bus will be involved.
Yeah, some of the best presenters, whether it's within our industry, like old Darren Staniforth and Tony Coble, God rest his soul, etc., and even on telly like Anton Deck, whatever, some of the best presenters, they kind of bounce and feed off each other, and it kind of brings it to life a little bit. When you go and see Darren and Dave Austin now with the CF Tech Talks, etc., they're really good because they're engaging. But it's important information. You take some of the way from it. So they all got a copy of Best Practice Guide too, and we had some winners that won the AVIs and the proving units, and they come back up and ask some really important questions after we point them towards the requirements, and not requirements as such, but the considerations of GS38, and we point them towards our little video that we put together. We have got some videos that we haven't quite finished yet that we've half recorded, showing the procedure on a single phase installation, a complete installation, and a single circuit, and where you might have a scenario like my house where you've got your external meter box with an isolator in there and the boards in the middle of the house. And let's look at it in different ways. And then we're going to go and see our good friend Eddie Clements at his new unit, where we've got a real life commercial installation there, and where we're going to look at a complete three-phase installation, how we'd isolate that, how we go about it, and maybe a single circuit, maybe a panel. There's all sorts of different scenarios you can consider. But again, the more we can do with that, the more ideas we've got, the different types of scenarios, the more we can put out there. People are going to find it useful, especially the young apprentices, the learners, even sparks that may have not experienced that type of site or that type of installation, etc. So the more we can do collectively and put it out there and have it free to access, free to use, and as long as it's technically correct, then it's got to be a good thing, hasn't it? And I'd rather people use that and utilize that, or have a place where they can ask questions, or maybe request a podcast, or we've got some great people around us. So it is exciting, but there's always work to do. There's always something to do, and I don't know how you do it all, Mark, as well. Running the business, looking after the lads, keeping the wife happy and the dog and the kids, and doing this stuff as well. Hats off to you. You've asked how me and Craig are doing, but like, how are you doing? That's the point. Do you know
I'm
what I
all
mean?
good. I'm good at bossing people around in the business, so they just get on with it, and I tell them what to do. No, it's one of those. Signed up for doing this, so yeah, I'm up for seeing it through. But I'm busy, very busy with the old solar stuff. That's why I couldn't get down to Elex. Actually, I was going to come to this one. For those who didn't know, I've kind of been on strike from Alexis for some of the reasons I think Richard mentioned earlier on in this one around might have been Craig actually, around apprentices being allowed to enter. But that's over now. That's no longer the case. So I am back attending. However, the weather's been terrible. So we've been catching up with solar PV installs and getting stuff over the line with that. So I missed it, but I'm going to go to Bolton. Hopefully you guys might or might not be there.
Yeah.
I asked about the presenting side because I did a little thing over in Ireland before Christmas. And I'm used to having meetings, I guess, with small groups of people, maybe 10, 15, and doing all the YouTube and the podcasts and stuff, no problem. But standing up in front of 100, 150 maybe that was there, I was bricking it. I totally forgot most of what I wanted to say. I had some notes to read, but forgot to read them. And yeah, it was not a pleasant experience, I'll be honest. So that's something I want to really improve on and maybe draw on some of your more experience on that.
I said that I wasn't nervous before, especially before Elex. I'd be lying because you are, but that's where your preparation, your planning comes in. For me, a PowerPoint is just somewhere to remind you of what you're talking about, and someone for people to take, either photographs or take information from. What you got to get across is what's in here is your knowledge and your passion for it, and you back that up with your knowledge. But it's something you get used to. But I always find it better bouncing off somebody else. I mean, I'm quite capable of delivering whatever, but I think then if you miss something or you want to add something, it's a bit like this, isn't it? This is my opinion, is your opinion, Craig's, but we'll all add a little bit, and that makes you think about something else, and then you consider something else. So all the great minds work together. I think it is good, but it's we'll take that opportunity off and completely. So if we're not able to make it, you're welcome to use our delivery and stuff, or somebody else can use it, do your own, whatever. But I think we've got to take that opportunity and do what we can. If we can get these rigs we were talking about, get those built, then when people can feel free under no pressure to come and follow the guide, the sequence that's in BPG2, whatever they want to do, ask a few questions. Do I need to confirm this? How do I do that? How do you get this to do this? How do I do this? Blah, blah, blah. It's got to be a good thing, isn't it? Because we're saying that we've got a problem, but we're not adding to the problem by leaving silly comments or calling somebody out. We're actually providing something in a space where everyone feels safe and they can ask questions, and that's the point, because you ain't helping otherwise. And then hopefully we'll see those injuries come down, deaths come down, and everyone just becomes the norm, as you quite rightly say. It's the norm then, and it's not about being cool. It's just the norm, isn't it? Let's go to work, get the graft done, and go home safe and enjoy ourselves. That's what it's all about. So, yeah.
I was going to say, Richard, when you said about you still making some more of these videos, I've got a couple of environments we can catch up about where it would be good for you to come and bring in. Some industrial situations where warehouses can't be shut down over 24 hours, exactly, or the whole building can't be down, which gives a different obstacle. But also the big project that we're on, if you come down to that, that's got a HV transformer feeding an ACB. 60 meters away, that ACB is then fed into a big main panel with another ACB inside our building, and then off of that big MCCB panel, you're feeding bus bar and submains going through 4 floors of a building with, I think in total there's about 16 distribution boards in there, and it's everything from office to mechanical to external powers and car chargers and the works, and it's interesting for, I don't think anybody's really gone through that sort of level of detail of how you go through each of those scenarios and how you'd maybe address a building in that manner, especially when we finish it. There'll be a UPS involved in there as well with dedicated comm supplies where it can't be switched off and the company can't ever lose the servers. So how do you go through that sort of process of dealing with those situations as well?
again, great conversations and great little videos. You know, I've always found historically, even for myself, even when I used to use it for teaching and stuff, but the stuff that really makes a difference is the stuff that like Dave Austin used to do, and that on the Learning Lounge, where they might be talking about you know, a horticultural installation or agricultural, but they'd actually be within that environment and talking about the, you know, the additional requirements in part 7, where you've got a cow shed, but they're actually in it. Do you know what I mean? That it doesn't half add value when you've got a real life scenario and the things you've got to consider. I think the more of that we can do in whatever it is, whatever we're looking at, I think that would add such a lot of value to it. Do you know what I mean? But it's having the time, but you know, I'm committed to do whatever I can to try and to help, and also further my own knowledge, because some of those special installations or locations, you know, I haven't worked on some of them, restricted movement and things like that. Again, Dave's worked on some I haven't, and I've worked on some he hasn't. You probably the same, and Mark. So, and you know, Neil and a few of the other, you know, really, you know, collective people that we know, we should be able to add some value to loads of it. But I'd love to come and see you there, mate. That would add some context to some of the stuff you were talking about with what you've been designing. Do you know what I mean? That's on a whole another level, isn't it? That's not a shower circuit in someone's dwelling. That's like you know, it's on another level. But it just goes to show the all the different, you know, scenarios that you might come across, and different designs and different projects, and the level of detail that's involved that people don't see, as Mark said earlier as well. It's immense, isn't it? It's immense.
It is. I mean, just to chuck it out there, if you were up for it, Craig, I'd happily bring Apprentice One-to-One podcast as a roadshow to come and see what you've been doing. Obviously, there's the permissions you might need around all of that, but that'd be really interesting, I think, for me and the audience. So just to chuck that in the mixing pot.
Yeah.
Definitely, I'm sure they'd be more than happy. I'm with them all tomorrow. I'll have a conversation. It's a fair old step for you, because it's way down Guildford Way, which, you know, is south even for me. But 100% you'd be welcome to sort of just go through that installation. You know, we will have probably 8 apprentices on that job. You know, we've got a few in the firm, like there's, and as I say, it was literally an empty shell in 4. So I think Mikey had put a video up of some of what we'd done on there, but yeah, everything went into that job, and yeah, more than welcome anytime, Mark. I'll just sort of say to them, you're coming down, they're quite happy for filming and stuff to be done there. Mikey used to film, and he was down there working with us as well, so there's no filming issues, there's no recording issues or anything, so it's
It'd be the podcast on tour, mate. So you'd be taking us around doing the showing and posting. But I'd love to come and see it and help do that. I think it'd be interesting for those who've listened to you talking about it, and something good for us to do. Is there anything either of you want to add on to this podcast before we end it? Because we're kind of at the hour mark and people will be switching off.
Yeah. No, just to refresh my memory on when you had the academy open for that day, Mark. What date was that again?
That was going to be the closing comment from me, because we are full from attendees, so don't get in touch to come for this particular one, but keep sending your requests to come along to the Apprentice One-to-One Academy. We have got a little event we're doing on the 8th of April. I think it's the 8th of April, and I think Richard's maybe going to come up. We've got a few other people who are proper qualified lecturers as well who are going to be here, and some other electricians. And I think if everybody shows up, 10 trainees / apprentices, and we're going to run through some testing stuff first. If anyone else has got any other specific requirements, we're going to have a look at that. I was doing it from 6 p.m. till 10 p.m. to try and allow people who are working to come along and take part. But there has been other people say, can you start a bit earlier? So I'm going to open the doors 10 o'clock in the morning. I'll be here all day. Other people who are helping may drop in or out later on through the day, whatever. But there'll be an open door for anyone who is kind of wanting to come along and have a look around, and those of you coming along to take in some training. We're going to try and repeat that at least once every month. We do this week to week anyway, but once every month where we throw it out to the social media sphere. So it's going to be happening more and more.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to come back and talk about earthing and bonding, as Craig's raised this subject, and me and Richard want to delve into it with him. Maybe Jamie will join us as well, and Dave, who knows? We can have a real dig into all that and share what we maybe do or don't know. And I've got a solar special coming as well with Jay and possibly another solar installer, where we're going to talk about some of the issues that are out in and around all that from people taking part in those installs. And you guys are welcome to join in with that podcast as well.
Great. That'd be correct.
We've got those two things to dive into. I think that gives us some good topic bases for those people listening and following along. If you've got anything you do want us to talk about, do drop it in the comments. Get involved with us on social media. We're open to speak about anything, really. And thanks for joining me tonight, gents. It's been great chatting with you. I've loved catching up. It's been too long. We need to keep on the train of doing them more often, I think, than the audience don't have to suffer me on my own too much. But thanks for taking the time. I know Craig's got an early start tomorrow. Please do get involved in the comments. Cheers for watching, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.